Hello. Today we are going to go back to the Bardock book and read parts 2 and 3. Uh, so you note that the first part of the Bardock book was particularly useful to get you started on writing your paper, and that's why we began with the Bardock book very early on. You had your eightfold path, you had his ideas on how to structure and put together a policy analysis. Part 2 and Part 3 deal a little bit more with the idea of policy analysis as a profession and how moving forward as a policy analyst in the rest of your career, you'll do things like develop sources, create plans to implement your policies by creating institutional arrangements that will work going forward. And in a sense, this is a little less useful for your paper and a little bit more useful for those who wish to become policy analysts. Because part of the idea of a course like this, an introduction to policy analysis, is to introduce you to the field and what it is that you're going to do. Ultimately, what you're going to be is someone who can gather information for people who have a point of view, but not necessarily a way to implement that point of view with actual good policy. So in any case, I strongly encourage you all to look at and read through this section. And I do think that there are some elements that might be useful to you as you write your paper and as you finish the course. Now, once you've completed the slides, another video that I think will be particularly interesting to a lot of students will be Martin Gillen's Affluence and Influence. Gillen's actually wrote a book called Affluence and Influence, which is very current, very much in the discussion amongst people in the field, particularly as it relates to public policy, but also ideas such as equality and some of the concepts that Stone might have introduced to you. Now, I think that when you consider Affluence and Influence, it's not really a book about race. It's not really a book about differences other than the differences that people have in control based on economics. So I think a lot of you will be particularly interested in this. It's, we give you a lot of material related to rational choice theory that says that the market and economic views of political science and public policy are useful for solving the policy problems that you're all facing. And this section, this module, does some of this from the perspective of Bardock, but we're also constantly introducing concepts from sociology and political science that are a little bit more based on fixing social problems and giving government its due, or at least giving advocacy its due. So what you see here is a video where Gillen's is talking about his book, and if you listen to it, you will gain a lot of important information. I would recommend that you look at or you look into reading his book, but you can get everything you need for this course by watching this video. I would add that you're going to be writing a reaction paper that's going to try to help you synthesize some of his ideas. And I think that looking at and being aware of Gillen's is going to help you as you write your paper. I find this to be particularly important. It builds nicely with some of the things that Ingram said. It works well with some of the things that Stone wrote. And I think that ultimately, one of the reasons why government exists is in order to fix problems that related to undue power that wealthy people have in the market. But interestingly, I think Gillen's calls into question a perspective that you'll get if you listen to Munger, you'll get if you listen to a lot of people who are supporters of market-based economics and market-based policy analysis. There's this perception that in a democratic system that the leaders of government have a strong incentive to do what the middle class prefers, right? After all, the middle class represents the largest portion of the public. It maybe more importantly represents the tie-breaking portion of the public. If half of the people in the, if say somewhat more than a third of the people in the country are not wealthy and somewhat more than a third of the people are middle class, and then you have this smaller group of wealthy people, when the wealthy and the middle class work together, they tend to get the policies that they prefer. That's the rationale. Gillen's presents a different idea that suggests that it's actually the wealthy that tend to have power outsized when compared to their portion of the population. And I read what you guys say. I think a lot of you will not have to be strongly pressured to believe that. If you do not agree, I respect that. There's a lot of literature in economics and political science that suggests that there just is so much combined wealth and combined political power in the middle class that it offsets this. But I want to give you this one tool if you have, in order to rethink some of your ideas. And now, on the other hand, if you're like, "Yay, I'm a socialist," I love that. Send me an email. Say, "I want my views to be challenged," and I can certainly send you some ideas for readings that would cause you to, probably not change your mind. Does anybody ever change their mind? But there is another side to the argument. I just think that having presented the Munger and the Bardock approach, that we should perhaps look at a different perspective. So I hope for all of you that your midterm went well. If you are having problems with any of these assignments in the course, feel free to contact me. I think that I'm going to be a little slower to grant broad exemptions and extensions to people, but if you have a legitimate